To discuss the latest, we are joined once again by Nicholas Coghlan. Mr. Coghlan was the sole Canadian diplomatic presence in Sudan from 2000 to 2003, and he was also Canada's first ambassador to South Sudan from 2012 to 2013. Mr. Coghlan, thank you for joining us once again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, as we noted as we introduced this topic, Canada has now suspended flights, and that essentially leaves the port of Sudan and escape by sea as the preferred option. But just how dangerous is that journey? If Khartoum is too dangerous for Canadian forces, what will it be like for civilians to travel what I believe is hundreds of kilometers out of the capital to get to the port?
Well, there's no question it's going to be problematic. This isn't the magic bullet, no pun intended. It's in normal circumstances, it is a metal road. In normal circumstances, it's a 12-hour drive. I understand people have been taking between 35 and 45 hours to do it over the last few days. I would say number one challenge of using this route, and this is, obviously it is security on the way. One of the strategies which the UN has used, and the US has used it at least once, is organization of a convoy. And from what we understand, there have been at least aerial surveillance. They've put aerial surveillance over the convoy to give them advanced intelligence of any problems coming up ahead, which is obviously pretty useful information. A number of challenges, obviously the actual travel, also just getting your people together in Khartoum will be hugely problematic. Khartoum is literally from one block to the next, controlled by different fighting parties. So that's still going to be an obstacle, as it was for people getting to the airport before. So let's assume you get to Port Sudan in some organized fashion. I think air evacuation is then an option. It is definitely a safer option than it was in Port Sudan, than it was in Sudan, in Khartoum. And your second option is maritime evacuation. There are ferries across to Saudi Arabia. Probably not where most people want to go for one reason or another, but of course we do have a couple of ships in the region, as do other countries. So that is an option for getting people out. But certainly it's not necessarily. I think it is the only option at this moment. That doesn't mean it's an ideal option by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. Now there were reported 6 Canadian evacuation flights that did successfully land and get Canadian nationals out of Sudan before the whole operation was halted. More than 500 people were flown out, according to reports, but only 175 were Canadian. Aren't Canadians prioritized in those kinds of evacuation flights?
Oh, they certainly are. But these evacuations are necessarily a team effort. If you have to kind of visualize this airstrip, which is an old military airstrip to the north of Khartoum, it's actually not in very good condition. It's under fire, as we've seen. Your number one objective is to keep as few planes on the ground at any one time and to turn around those planes as quickly as you can. That requires quite a lot of complex coordination with your allies. A couple of times that nearly went wrong. Not Canada's fault in any way, but the UK, you know as well as I do the political situation there. They have been under heavy pressure on their evacuation flights, and there was a minor diplomatic incident when basically they flew in a plane without having coordinated with the Germans who were doing air traffic control, and there was nearly potentially a major incident. So you have to coordinate, and the game is that everybody plays their part. So, for example, in Juba, we didn't send a single plane in. Canadians all went out with our allies. This time we've got planes in, so we are taking other people out. I believe we took 140 Americans, which, in some ways is repayment to that debt. Mm-hmm. But I really don't think the people getting on the planes are frankly that fussed about the flag on the back. The main idea is to get out, and that's all. It's a team project doing that.
Now, the foreign minister, Melanie Joly, she is currently on the ground in Kenya trying to help the situation from a distance. But, realistically, what can the minister do if she and the diplomatic mission are not physically in Sudan?
That's a major challenge. Of course, nearly all our allies are still out. The one exception is the United Nations. They left Khartoum, but they moved their core operations to Port Sudan. And again, I hesitate to quarterback on this, but I think whereas if Port Sudan remains secure, I think we're going to see a number of countries thinking about putting back in a small presence, both consular to assist with citizens getting out of Port Sudan, whether by sea or by air, and also political and diplomatic and aid related, because there's no question Port Sudan is going to be the principal channel by which, when security permits, that aid is going to flow back in. So Port Sudan is the obvious place to reopen, but I hesitate to quarterback the decision, but from what we know at the moment, it is relatively safe there.
Now, the current advice still is for Canadian nationals in Sudan to shelter in place. Given all the machinations are happening right now, is it wiser to try to get your way to Port Sudan or to stay where you are?
Very difficult decision. I'd really hesitate to call that at 13,000 kilometers away, and it varies day by day. But having said that, we've had at least one American-led convoy has made it slowly, but without incident to Port Sudan. The UN convoy made it. And I sense from what I hear that there is talk of more convoys as the situation permits. Obviously, it is better to go in a large group. It is not that and again, it's worth remembering, foreigners are not necessarily targets here. It is a question of crossfire and also of looting and banditry rather than groups deliberately targeting foreigners. But no question, it is a risk. And really, I couldn't say whether any individual in any given situation should take that risk. But I think it's clear that is now the safer option than restarting aerial evacuations from Khartoum.
Nicholas Coghlan, really appreciate the experience and the expertise. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much for following the story.